In this video we are going to take a look at the very high level encounter between two very seasoned grandmasters. White is Ivan Cheparinov, a former super grandmaster, and black is Ivan Sokolov, even a stronger former super grandmaster. This being said, let's just take a look at the position next to me. Here in this position it is White's turn, and your task is to find the best move here. Which move would you play here? I will give you a slight hint. Just look at the title of this video. We are talking about pins. Let me know in the comment section what you would play here, what your solution is. And now let's just jump straight into the analysis of this game and make sure to stay until the end so you see if your solution was right. Ivan Cheparinov playing the white pieces starts with first e4, black plays e5, knight f3, knight c6. Now white has a wide choice of different opening systems, but usually it's the Ruy Lopez on top level. And here, indeed, Cheparinov goes for bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez. And now Ivan Sokolov plays a6. And white can enter the exchange variation here, but then should play something like castle d or d4, for example, or other moves. And the reason the pawn on e5 should not be taken is probably familiar to you. If not, it's queen to d4. And now it's a double attack against pawn and knight. And white is just losing the extra pawn. And suddenly black has the pair of bishops and white has nothing in exchange for that, and black still can castle, white cannot. Black is probably better here. But let's go back. In the game, bishop a4 was played, a very standard move, knight f6. White castles, of course, this pawn can be taken, but white just gains a lot of counterplay with d4, so the pawn is completely compensated. And it's a normal opening system called the open Spanish or Ruy Lopez. So in the game, bishop to e7 was played, very flexible, and I always had the feeling that e7 is the natural square of the bishop. So rook to e1, defending the e4 pawn, b5, bishop b3. Now black castles, and usually the main line is or was c3. However, recently moves like a4 are much more popular, and the reason is that after c3 black could go for d5 and play a so-called Marshall gambit, because this pawn is indeed sacrificed on e5, but after c6 you can see that now black is ready to play bishop d6, maybe moves like queen to h4, and put a lot of pressure against the king's side. Not very pleasant for white, and the evaluation is equal, so both sides have chances. However, white should watch out for a lot of tactics. So not very pleasant, and therefore a lot of players decide to play so-called anti-marshals like a4 or, in this case, h3. A very interesting one, because h3 is a typical move in the Ruy Lopez, controlling the g4 square, so the knight cannot jump there, neither can the bishop on c8. And it's a new, or recently it's a very popular idea. Bishop to b7 played, of course, if you need to find a good square for the bishop, and if it can't go to g4 and white already played h3, why not put it on b7 immediately? And now white plays d3 and pawn to d6. And this is a very important moment, because d6 is overprotecting e5. Why overprotecting? Because it's attacked once and it was defended once. So sorry, let's make it red. So the knight was defending, here the knight was defending it, and the white knight was attacking it, d6, And the knight on c6 here is free to move, and it's ready to jump to a5 and claim the white squared bishop for a knight. And this exchange indeed would be very favorable for black. So white just wants to avoid this and plays a3. Of course, there are other moves, like bishop to d2, controlling the a5 square. But in the game, a3 was played, and now if the knight went to a5, there would be bishop a2, and black cannot claim the white squared bishop. So let's just see what would happen after a logical move like knight to d2, and knight a5, knight f1, and then after moves like rook e8 or c5, finally what would happen is knight takes b3, a takes b3, and now white is struggling to find active moves because the most active piece, the white squared bishop on b3, is gone. So therefore make sure to not lose it or exchange it under such circumstances if you're playing the white pieces. Of course, if you're playing black, feel free to do that. So let's continue with the game. Still, a move like knight a5 is very popular here, and then follows bishop to a2 and c5, knight bd2, and the game continues. There are also other moves, such as rook to e8, or the game move knight to b8, and this is known from the main line of the Ruy Lopez with c3, which we had taken a look at a little bit earlier. In the same, so white usually has pawns on c3 and d4, and this pawn is still on a2, and then the knight retreats to b8, and the idea is that the knight wants to jump to d7. This is one idea. Another idea is that black wants to play c5, and this is unblocking the pawn. So knight b to d2 played, and now c5. And now white continues with a very symptomatic move, which is very common among Ruy Lopez across many different lines, and this is knight f1. So the knight is just transferred from b1 to f1, and then either e3 or g3. And then knight bd7. Now you can see black moved the knight to b8 in order to put it on a better square, the d7 square, and then also to play c5. So first played c5, then moved the knight to d7. So you can see the idea behind knight b8. Knight to e3, a move like knight to g3 had been fine too. The main thing here is covering the f5 square. So knight e3, and now black plays a very interesting move, c4. What is the idea behind c4? Black is attacking this pawn on e4, but it is defended now. If white took on c4, then bishop takes e4, c takes b5, a takes b5. Now white has a majority on the queen side, as you can see, but black has a very comfortable center. So this position is around equal. Therefore, white refrained from taking on c4 and played bishop to a2. Then followed rook to c8, covering the c4 pawn one time more, but still it's not enough. If white wanted to, he could take on c4. A better move here, however, had been rook to f to e8. So in case of knight to f5, black has the very pleasant bishop to f8. And we will see why this might be very important. Rook to c8, and now white could play knight f5, and black would probably play a move like knight c5, and it seems that white might have some chances here to play for something. However, in the game, Cheparinov played queen to e2. Now, knight to c5 was played. A very logical move, putting more pressure on the e4 pawn, which is still defended. But now black would face a move like knight to f5, and it's unclear because this rook is still blocking the f8 square, and the position is probably equal to slightly better for white, in my opinion. However, in the game, d takes c4 was played, and here followed the very logical bishop takes e4, c takes b5, a takes b5. And now, of course, what white is not doing is playing queen takes b5 because of bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and the king's side is completely ruined. And additionally, this square is weakened on f4, and the knight is more than happy to jump to e6 and get ready to exploit these squares. And apart from that, taking on e6 is not good because of f takes e6, and suddenly black gains the open or semi-open file f file, and this position is just not very healthy. So let's go back. Of course, Cheparinov, a very strong grandmaster, didn't play this move. Instead, he played a very ambitious move like knight to g5. Here followed bishop to c6, and now knight to f5, and this already looks very dangerous for black, so black should watch out what he's doing. And Sokolov had a tough choice. Here, the best move is queen to d7, just attacking this knight and forcing it to do something. So usually they take on e7, and then queen takes e7, and the position is around equal. However, in the game h6 was played, and this is, according to the engine, a bad choice because of a very surprising move. If your opponent attacks you, you have, or a piece of you have a few choices. You can move the piece away, you can defend the piece, and you can counterattack somewhere else, so just ignore it. Of course, there are also other techniques like interrupting and so on, but we aren't focusing on that. So here, the good move is pawn to b4. And now, if h takes g5, then white is getting an advantage after b takes c6. So the c5 knight can be taken. And the reason is that after d takes c5, queen takes e5, this bishop here is lost. So, for example, rook e8, it's now defended twice but attacked 3 times, knight e7 check, and black is completely lost. He is down a piece, and of course, this is nothing what he wants to achieve. So now let's go back. In the game, knight to f3 was played, and now again the position is a little bit better than one move earlier for black, and now a move like bishop to e4 should have been played, knight g3, bishop h7, and the position is fine for black. However, in the game, queen to d7 was played, and here you were asked which move you would play, and the thing is that there is this unprotected bishop on e7, so knight 3 to d4, and this piece can basically not be taken because of knight e7 check, king h8, and knight takes c8. Not very pleasant. Bishop to d8 played, knight takes c6, queen takes f5, and white has the pair of bishops, and white has an advantage here. For example, knight a7 attacking this pawn a second time. Rook b8, knight takes b5, and white is up a pawn. But why wouldn't you take the pawn immediately? Well, queen takes b5 was played in the game, and now it is your turn. Which move would you play here? Let me know in the comment section. The move after which white decided to resign was queen to d7. And now white can do nothing, because every time the knight moves to a square where the queen is defended, black is just able to take this piece because the queen is protected twice. For example, knight c takes d7, or the f knight takes on d7, and the position is very fine. And what about a7? Well, then queen takes a7, and still the position is very fine. So, as you can see, the position is completely lost because the knight has to move. It's attacked twice, cannot be defended a second time. And this is where Cheparinov decided to resign. A very interesting game, and also a very tense game with a very surprising outcome. And since we are taking a look at sharp chess, now let's go to another very sharp game, also including some very interesting tactical ideas. See you in the next video.